Is the Aussie larrikin dead? That's what we're going to find out tonight, because I'm urging people, if they want to get the Aussie larrikin off life support system and back up on his feet or her feet, then get there tonight, watch the show, get a few cold ones in the fridge and a meat pie, and away we go. The mortal enemy, if you like, of the Aussie larrikin is political correctness. Now, that has become really clear. It became clear over the course of the documentary when I spoke to all sorts of people from the 70s and 80s who'd been involved in those sorts of larrikin shows and are now deemed, oh, that was sexist or that was racist or that was homophobic or whatever. I actually spoke to them. So people like Delvine Delaney, who was the classic sex symbol in the 70s. I mean, I was a Aussie schoolboy back then, and Delvine, every schoolboy's probably many schoolgirls' fantasy was Delvine Delaney. So I spoke to her and I said, you know, were you exploited? Was this... And she said, I was the one exploiting Hogs and Strop. I mean, I had the time of my life. So we have to look at why the Aussie larrikin has been so denigrated. And it always comes back, Peter, to political correctness. Oh, you can't say that anymore.
Is there a particular point in time, was there a particular moment, was there a something that was the trigger for when PC came in and became a problem for comedy?
I wish it were that simple, but it actually was a creeping and almost like a tentacle grip around the throat of comedy that just gets tighter and tighter, and it never stops, because even just in the last weekend, we've seen, Peter, things like Chris Lilly. Now, Chris Lilly, Summer Heights High, great show, not from the 70s or 80s, but from 2008. Now that's been thrown out. Now, are you telling me that that whole generation of school kids and their parents, and I was one, my son loved that show, loved Jemai, loved Jonah, loved Mr. G, loved all these characters. Are you now telling me that that generation of school kids were racist, sexist, and that the show was? Of course not. And the reality is you've got a great talent, and this is the tragic thing about political correctness, which we learn throughout the documentary, is all these extraordinarily talented people have had their talent cut from underneath their feet and told, no, you can't use your talent, whether it's Bill Leak, whether it's Paul Fennick, whether it's Vince Sorrenti, all these Barry Humphries. Oh, no, you can't use your talent. This is so wrong. And now it's happened to Chris Lilly as well. It's disgusting, and we have to stand up and fight it, Peter.
OK, well, Ricky Gervais, you know, the famous British comedian, one of the best in the world, there's a quote from him. I just want to get your thoughts on this. He says, please stop saying you can't joke about this anymore. You can, he says. You can joke about whatever you like. Some people won't like it, and they will tell you that they don't like it. Then it's up to you whether you give a damn or not, and so on. It's a good system, or words to that effect. What do you make of that comment?
100% correct. And he's a great comedy talent. He's been with us for years. Not dissimilar to Chris Lilly. He's played all sorts of different characters and done all sorts of different things. These people are really rare. These talents are amazing. And if you've got them, you want to nurture them, not stifle them. So what Ricky Gervais there is saying, look, he'll crack jokes. So jokes come into his head. He's a creative person. So this joke comes into his head, that joke comes into his head, this skit, that idea. So he does them. Now, along the way, sure, some people might get offended. Comedy, by its very essence, nearly always, unless it's bland and, you know, the stuff you get on the Christmas crackers, unless it's pretty unfunny humour, there is going to be a point to it. There is going to be something that may offend.
So where is that line? When does it
There
stop
isn't
being
a line.
joke?
The line is up to the individual. If you don't like Ricky Gervais' comedy, if you don't like Chris Lilly or Paul Hogan or Barry Humphries, don't watch them. But don't make other people not watch them, and don't judge other people saying, oh, because you watch that, that means you're this, that and the other. What sort of a world do we want to live in? Because who are these people telling us what we can and cannot enjoy? What gives them the God-given right to say, well, if you watch this, that's wrong, but if you watch that, oh, well, you can just watch that?
It feels like you can't turn around, though. Are we going to be able to turn this around? I mean, could you imagine, I'll give you an example, right? So there was Tropic Thunder.
Yes.
Robert Downey Jr. did the whole blackface thing, and he was in the award season. It was a very funny performance. Could that be made today?
No, but we have to get back to a point where it could be, and I'll tell you why. It's absolutely critical to understand why blackface is so offensive to African Americans, the history of slavery, the history during the 20s when white artists would use blackface, steal the black music, and away they would go. Of course it's hideously offensive. Just because blackface was in its day offensive doesn't mean that 100 years later, if Chris Lilly, in order to portray a Tongan schoolboy, slightly darkens his skin, that he's somehow trying to offend African Americans. Or if Robert Downey Jr., who was actually playing a Crocodile Dundee character, pretending to get an acting role by pretending to be an African-American because they were more... That was a great sketch. It was nothing to do with the blackface of the 1920s. We have to be mature enough, we have to be intelligent enough, and we have to be honest enough to say, OK, that is offensive. Now, if you want to go down that path, be very, very careful. You know what the risks are. But equally, don't judge every single actor who puts on a bit of makeup, because where will we end up?